I'm here today with my 1960 Studebaker Lark that I bought as a pandemic impulse buy. I bought it because I had a different 1960 Studebaker Lark that I did an amateur restoration on. And I think that working on cars, it's a great hobby, but it also is a form of therapy.
And believe you're wasting a gorgeous day like this to make a video? Yes,
You
correct.
too?
Yes, me too. I cannot believe you're wasting such a gorgeous day and not going for a ride on your motorcycle. You know that this motorcycle is like a Reese's peanut butter cup. Two great things coming together. Of British and Indian technology, engineering and manufacturing creating this wonderful motorcycle. So quit being a bitch. Gear up and go for a ride.
Okay.
Yes, I know, you need to go for a ride.
Let's go for a ride.
If you needed to go to the bathroom.
I know. Well, they were right. I did need to go out for a ride. That's what the Royal Enfield Interceptor is about. It's about rejuvenating my soul. And whereas working on cars is a form of therapy, riding your motorcycle is a more convenient form of therapy. It certainly costs a lot less than working on a car. So I wanted to show you this 1960 Lark that I did an amateur restoration on. So let's check it out.
Main reasons I chose this car was because the floorboards were solid. They weren't rotted out like a lot of Studebakers can get. So I started prepping it. You can see that somebody had primered it and experimented with doing flames and other things like that. So the hood was bent. So thankfully my friend Jason had a hood off of a Champ pickup truck, which is the same thing. So we assembled that on there. And the reason that I went with yellow primer is, well, I'm a cheap bastard, so that was the cheap stuff, and it worked out okay. The one mistake that I did make was I didn't choose the right temperature reducer, so I had a bunch of orange peel in this, so there was a lot of wet sanding and buffing out of the paint, and that took a while to do. So one of the things I did want to do was I wanted to change the color of the interior from its original brown. And I was torn between either doing a dark red or a turquoise. So I started disassembling it, and you can see that, well, I chose going with turquoise, which it looked really good in there. It looked appropriate with the tan color that I'd chosen for it. So that's the nice thing about these. It's easy to disassemble this. It's just nothing but nuts and bolts and screws. And one of the things I did do is I pulled the steering wheel off and I two-toned it so that it matched the color combination of the top and the front of the dash. So it came down to I wasn't going to do the rest of the interior, so I took it to a shop. And the reason that I chose this shop was that they had reupholstered the rear seat, and then I found a replacement front bench seat. And the guy, he gave me originally a decent quote and told me all the stuff he was going to do. And So made an appointment and took the car down there and pulled the front and back glass out because you need to remove them in order to install the headliner, and I didn't want them to do it. And when I asked the guy for a new price quote on, what everything was going to be, he gave me a price quote that was well above what he originally quoted. When I gave him the original price quote he had given me, he said, "I never said that." So always remember that, get a quote in writing, because someone's word really doesn't mean much anymore. And they did an okay job on the interior. The guy originally was going to put some nice padding underneath the carpet. All they did was glue the carpet down to the floor, and it was decent. So I did have to continue finishing the interior, and one of the things I needed to do was I had to paint around the doors in order to complete the turquoise look inside of the cab. 2 years of driving the car, I had determined that it was time to overhaul the engine. I had found race slips inside the car when I first bought it, and also early on I discovered a bent push rod that we straightened out and ran it that way until it was time to just pull the engine and overhaul it. So I pulled the engine on this and started to tear it down and get it ready for overhauling.
We'll take a pause right here because I wanted to tell you a little short story. So when I was tearing apart the engine, my friend Glenn had called me, and he was wondering what I was doing. So I told him, I'm going to be at my friend's shop, and I'll be tearing apart the engine. He's like, cool. You mind if I bring my dad along with me and visit? I was like, sure, that'd be cool. So I'm hanging out in the garage, and I'm tearing down the engine, and Glenn shows up with his dad. And I've never met his dad before. And the first thing I hear from Glenn's dad when he comes in the shop is he says, "That's not a Studebaker. That's a fucking Lark." Needless to say, I was taken aback by his comment. But I kind of had to reconcile with what he was saying from what I'd been working on. So I had been watching the original Kung Fu TV series with David Carradine, Philip Ahn, and Key Luke. And this is kind of how I reconciled it. So here's a little clip of what's going inside my head.
Grasshopper, why are you upset?
Master, the man made derogatory comments about the car in which I've expressed myself through many hours of hard work.
Ah, Grasshopper, do the man's words take away all that you have created? Does not all your hard work still remain in what you've brought to life? For whom did you do all the hard work?
I just wanted to say before I turn into talking about overhauling the engine that sometimes people don't think before they speak. And although the words may sting, we just have to remember, who are we doing the work for? And that's all you got to remember. And try not to punch him in the throat.
So I had sent the heads out to be redone, and we determined that there was really nothing wrong with the bores in the cylinders, so there wasn't a lip or anything. So we decided just to hone it out and called it good, and we had the crank ground down. It didn't take long getting everything put back together, and the day came for installing the engine back inside of it. So I had already prepped the engine bay for installing the engine. And one of the things I did like was in the repair manual that they give the original colors. So I was able to paint the engine, the stock engine colors. And the only trouble I really had with putting the engine back in is my initial valve adjustment was incorrect because this has solid lifters. So when I first went to start it up, it had a nice clackety sound to it because I didn't have the valves adjusted right. One of the last things I needed to tackle was cleaning up all the overspray on the stainless steel and on the chrome. So I used a liquid metal polish with a very fine steel wool, and it all cleaned up very well. And I liked the results of how the cars turned out. I did replace the grill with the Champ pickup grill because I liked the way that it looked. But all in all, it turned out pretty well. I was pretty well happy with it, that I took a car that looked like this and I turned it into something that looked like this. and I saved a Studebaker.
I just wanted to conclude the video by saying that in spite of my bad acting and my bad accents, having a car and working on it is a form of therapy, on par with riding a motorcycle. They both are their own forms of therapy. And I'd like to also say that, yeah, this bike is like a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup because it's two great things coming together with the British and the Indian technology, engineering, and manufacturing building this bike. And I'm glad that Royal Enfield produces this bike because, you know what? Sometimes you just got to enjoy the things that come together and create something pretty good. Tasty.